Hey, what's up? This is Kevin from Kevin's Barbecue Joints, and this one's really great. It's with Grant Pinkerton from Pinkertons Barbecue, with location in Houston, Texas, as well as San Antonio, Texas. That San Antonio one is a newer location. What I like so much about this is that I learned so much about Grant Pinkerton. I didn't really know much about him. I had seen some interviews, some brief interviews, and I also saw some stuff online, read some stuff about him, but I didn't really know him as a person. And I think that you will go away from this knowing Grant more. I know his passion. I know his passion is for barbecue, but he has deeper passions that include rhetoric and writing and philosophical thought, and it's really special. And we're kindred spirits in many different ways, and his genuineness comes through. There's a lot to unpack in this. I'm going to try to make this intro sort of brief. It's an hour interview. We do get into the fact that he loves competition barbecue. He's involved with that. He is a two-time world beef champ at Memphis in May, which is incredible. His red sauce came in 11th out of 168. His mustard sauce came in 8th or 9th out of 168. And he's extremely proud about that. And he talks about why he does that. And I think you'll understand when you hear about it, but it makes sense. And those worlds don't always collide or even mesh. It's interesting to hear about that. I don't do a lot of interviews with people on the competition side just because I focus a lot more on the restaurants. And there's a lot of fun stories because he and his wife now, but they lived above the restaurant in Houston for 3.5 years. And there's a lot of fun stories about that. It's really quite interesting when you delve deeper into what that was like living above a barbecue joint. We talk about what he went into to make the San Antonio place the place that he really wanted it to be. We go a lot at the beginning and throughout into his business philosophy and how he approaches business. And he also mentioned to me that he is going to start having classes. So I'll put a link below to all their stuff because in late October there's going to be a class. There'll be also a class in the fall. And these classes are going to be unique, especially the fall, potentially spring class will be whole hog in a different way than anyone else is teaching whole hog. So I can't thank Grant enough for sharing his time, sharing his story, being forthright about everything. I do think that you'll want to visit both locations. They're open 6 days a week now, Tuesday through Sunday. I'll put the hours and everything below, and he talks about that in the interview. But it's definitely eye-opening and really enjoyable. I have a website at kevinsbbqjoints.com. I'm on all the social media at kevinsbbqjoints. But the end, stay safe and visit your local barbecue joint. Good afternoon, Grant. So good to talk to you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So how are you doing right now? How are things going for both your businesses? We'll get back into kind of your past, but not too deep into it. But I want to give people a chance to know more about each specific restaurant and kind of why you chose to open a second restaurant, all that good stuff. But how is your mindset right now?
Sure. I mean, it's great. We have an awesome team of people. We work really well together, and all the way from managers, all the way down to the people washing dishes and that kind of stuff. And I try to not say the term restaurant family because I tell people that work for me, I'm like, you have your family, then you have your coworkers, and then you have your friends. And it's really important to keep all of those three things. They can commingle a little bit, but for your health, it's probably better to, when you leave work, clock out and go hang out with your friends.
That's good advice, actually.
Just hang out with your coworkers all the time and come back. I said, we all love each other and we're all here for each other. But at the end of the day, your family is your family.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And it should be a comfortable place, like visiting a friend's family and being welcomed in and nice. But yeah, when you leave, you check out. And it's weird too, because I know I've left jobs and people have expected to become friends. And it was like the reason why we were close was because we were working all the time together.
Absolutely. That was the thing you had in common, right? Funny enough, sometimes this happens too, where, you go out with coworkers or whatever like that, and you just have that natural inclination of like talking about work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's kind of the one thread you have in common. So you keep talking about it, and before you know it, you probably meddle in waters that aren't necessarily the best to meddle in, or, take yourself to a mental place that it's not the safest spot to be. Leave work at work.
That is smart. That's really smart. How big is your staff now?
We have somewhere fluctuates between like 85 and 92 employees
At both
between
locations.
the two stores. Yeah. So San Antonio is a bit more staffed than Houston from a numbers standpoint, but not too much. We've had a lot of people that have worked for us for 4+ years, 2+ years, which is great in our business, especially at the Houston location. That we have a lot of people that have been there for a really long time.
That's great. Yes. Do you have some people that have been there from day one?
I do.
Wow. That's a big deal. That means something.
Yeah,
That's not every business has that.
no, and just, I mean, to stick in, especially in today's day and age, to stick in one job for 67 years,
Hmm.
is pretty uncommon. People like to move around and do different things. I think I was reading something a while back that said most people in my generation will have somewhere between 5 and 10 jobs in their lifetime, which
Wow.
I'm like sitting there thinking about, like, oh shit. I'm pretty sure I only have one, but you never know. I love business, so
Yeah, you
uh,
might open up maybe some
correct. I could dabble
ancillary
in other
businesses.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's no, that is true, and I think that people tend to, especially with so many options and different things these days and so many distractions, they get this itch, and then unless it's something that they really enjoy or they feel like they're being treated well. There's a lot of jobs that I've had that I haven't been treated well, or if you feel like you're not being
Right.
compensated properly, like even mentally compensated.
Right. Yeah. I'm a huge believer in work-life balance, and I try to bring that to the very forefront with, especially with my managers and, really everybody that works here. I want you to have a life outside of work.
Yeah,
There will be times where you can't, but that's true in any profession, right? That's true for me. That's true
yeah,
for doctors, lawyers. Sometimes work demands, 90% of your attention for weeks at a time. But there's other times where it's time to decompress and take a few days off. And, like, I'll tell them, no, like, leave, go have a 3-day weekend.
hmm,
You don't need to be here. Sometimes we'll send people from Houston to tag out people in San Antonio, or
oh, that's
things
smart.
like that. Just, hey, you need a breather. I mean, I love to think of business, and especially the restaurant business, a lot like a football team.
Okay.
I'm a big football fan, and I'd say I'm the head coach. But, like, it's really important to have a great offensive coordinator, a great defensive coordinator, and I equate those people to being your managers, right?
Okay, yeah,
I can't run the offense the whole time. If I'm running the offense the whole time, I'm neglecting other things in my job, right? My offensive coordinator should not really be meddling in the defensive coordinator's, kind of situation. They kind of need to stay in their lane and stay focused. And if they can take care and do their job, then it'll make the job easier for everybody else. And then underneath them, they have their players that they need to coach, get the most out of. And,
yeah,
just like guys on a football team, everybody has different personalities. So we can call ourselves managers, owners, all that kind of stuff. But really, at the end of the day, we're coaches, and we're
yeah.
trying to get the most out of each person and individual in our organization, and keep them happy and engaged. And, if you've done any sports, or anybody out there who's done sports knows that each person requires different kind of coaching. Some people you
Oh
have
yeah.
to be kind of hard with, and other people really need kind of some coddling and love, and to really get the most out of them. That's one of the things I love about being in the restaurant business is just doing that and kind of getting this oiled machine running, and seeing people grow, learn, and getting the most out of them.
Yeah, and imagine too what this is for their life path. Like this is a stepping stone in their life, and if you could propel them towards even greater things in their life, or if it's still working with you,
Right.
that's a big deal. That's like, and it's I was curious as to, did you ever imagine that you'd have almost 100 employees when you first started this in Houston? Like, is that something that, or did you have grand ideas with this, or was this something where you just wanted to open a restaurant?
No, it's very organic. I mean, I tell people the story a lot was when I was a little kid and people asked me what I wanted to do. I would tell them, oh, I'd love to open a restaurant, and I just had this, like, kind of
Huh.
romantic idea of, being in a restaurant, and I love talking to people and talking to guests, and I'm a big sports guy, obviously, and so I like that team element, all that kind of stuff. And, like, the response you get from everybody when you're 12 years old and tell people that you want to run a restaurant is, "You're crazy. That's a
Yeah.
terrible idea. You'll never see your family," and they pretty much always fail. And you're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay," like, which is a horrible thing to tell kids.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Don't dream big at all.
my parents never said that to me, but, other people who you'd mention it to. And
Yeah.
so I kind of went through life thinking about what else I could do. And I really like business, so kind of went just through it, kind of knowing that I'd be an entrepreneur. And then I got out of college, and I remember having, like, a very clear conversation with my dad one day about, I really just kind of have this passion for sales. I like business and selling things, but I want to sell a product I believe in. Like, I don't think that I think I could be really great at it, but I can't go and do this for something that I don't
Yeah.
in my heart truly believe is the best. And like on the side, I just started kind of cooking barbecue for fun and selling it. I was just working at the front desk at a friend's gym and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Obviously I'd gotten a degree in rhetoric and writing. And I'm very passionate about the outdoors. So as another kind of entrepreneurial side job, I wanted to start photographing and writing for outdoor magazines and like maybe doing some guiding and things like that. Just that's where I find peace in the outdoors. And so I thought it'd be cool to see if I could make a job out of it. But the barbecue thing was going, and that was kind of making me some money. And then I kind of realized I'm like, there's actually money in cooking food, and it's something that I'm passionate about. Like, I've always loved cooking. I started at a very young age. I was doing a Super Bowl party for somebody who was, I cooked hogs in high school that I'd raised in FFA. So I did these like full hog roasts at my house. One of the guys that worked at the gym was having a Super Bowl party and asked me to help cook this pig for a Super Bowl party. So I went, like, showed up at 4 o'clock in the morning, put it on a rotisserie, cooked it like old school over a spit style hog. And like, we're done. The game's coming on. He hands me like $200 cash. And he was like, man, thank you so much for coming over here and doing that. And I really wasn't anticipating getting paid or anything. I just had a great time hanging out there and doing it. And I remember going home and I called my mom and dad because I was living at their house. And I'm like, hey, I got $200 for cooking a hog. If I just find somebody where I could cook a pig every weekend, I'd be making like more money doing this than I am at my job right now. And there was like that aha moment that like, hey, somebody can pay me for my passion. So I started just kind of, after a sit down conversation with my boss, he was like, hey, Grant, you don't have a girlfriend, you don't have any debt, you live at your parents' house. Now is the time. You're 23, 24. Now is the time for you to be an entrepreneur. And then, like, amazingly, all my hours got cut, the following few weeks. And he's like, you can
So he was like kind of pushing you out?
100%,
Oh,
and he's like, your barbecue's great. I love it. You can use my parking lot as a pop-up spot. So I went on and bought a trailer, smoker, from Craigslist from that was built by a Liberty County agriculture class in the 90s. And I literally had my first Pinkertons barbecue pop up like 5 days later.
Really? And was it called Pinkertons?
And I drew my logo that we still have today out on a napkin with my brother, and we traded things back and forth. And I said, I kind of want like an old belt buckle or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what.
And he's very artistic, and I'm not super artistic from the drawing perspective, but I got a lot of cool things going on in my head. So between him and I, we kind of got to sketch out, and I like bummed some time off of a guy who was a student at U of H, and he digitized it for me. And I was like, okay, well, we're Pinkertons Barbecue, so it was born.
And what did you sell that? Were you selling hog or were you selling?
We did brisket, ribs, chicken, that first one. I think I did a couple sides, maybe my beans and a potato salad and cheese rice.
Like the potato salad that has been talked about? Like the one that you, okay.
That is my potato salad. So I get personally offended when people don't like it, but I've gotten better about not taking it to heart, but I really like it.
From what I've read and seen, I think on the, what was it, Barbecue Quest? Is that that you were most recently on, talking about the pepper? I didn't know about the pepper issue.
Yeah, that was a huge mistake on my part. I actually went to cook it for my grandmother, and it was, before Pinkertons Barbecue happened, and I was trying to shake some pepper into it, and the whole top came off. And then I scooped a bunch out.
Yeah, did you scoop? I was hoping you'd scoop some.
Mixed it all in, and then I tasted. I was like, oh, this is actually really good. Like, it's better like this. And so it's zingy and has a lot of pepper, and it actually goes really great with barbecue.
So is the biggest complaint that it's too peppery, or is it just?
No, we really don't have very many complaints. Like, people love that potato salad.
That's awesome. That's served at both locations, right?
Absolutely.
So are you, because I know that you've talked about how all these other people have this almost like a similar path into barbecue. Were you looking online at things? Like, were you looking at or buying books, like, or were you self-taught?
Kind of interestingly enough, like I've read one barbecue recipe my entire life.
Wow.
And that was back when I was in high school, and it was the Legends of Texas cookbook
Mhm.
recipe for brisket. And it was salt, pepper, and like just smoke it for at like 225 for an hour a pound. You know, it's like super rudimentary. Well, and I was like, okay, well, it seems simple enough. Then I had my little Weber Smoky Mountain going in the backyard and made that brisket and it was awesome. And then I tell people I proceeded to screw up every single one for a long time. I mean, they were okay, but like I remember that first one being like fire, you know?
Yeah.
And
And
then,
maybe you got too cocky inside your head or something, and then it.
well, my thing was I started effing with the recipe, you know? Okay, well, I'm going to add some garlic powder and cumin and this, and and it was just one of those things. I mean, naturally when you're young and like I love to cook, I just want to add flavors to it. But you know, the old tried and true is great. We still just use salt and pepper to this day. And once I kind of reverted back to the more traditional recipe, the brisket came back. But that first brisket I cooked was with mesquite. I love mesquite. I love
And you
mesquite.
strictly mesquite right now?
We use half mesquite, half post oak.
Okay.
So we cook on really big pits and we have a ton of combustion. So there's really no downside to using something like that. And I find that it gives the beef a particularly great like earthy note that isn't found in a lot of other meat. And a lot of people say, oh, you know, brisket cooked with mesquite or barbecue cooked with mesquite is so creosote and this, that, and the other. Well, I can make one with post oak that is just as creosote as a mesquite brisket if I want to. You know what I'm saying? You choke the fire back, you smoke it to hell. But if you're burning really clean, sometimes it's almost hard to like even get anything but just those kind of like subtle post oak notes, right? And I just found that like mesquite adds a really cool like nutty, almost like umami element to beef.
Is it are people against mesquite because it does have a higher moisture content or something? Or
A lot of backyard cooks, they like try to cook with it. And I mean, you know,
I'm
kind
trying to
of
think. I know I've cooked with it, but I don't recall it being.
like an analogy I would use with hunting is like a lot of people will tell you that wild pig is like really gross, but wild pig is freaking delicious. Most people just don't know how to cook it or completely screw it up somewhere in the process. It's the same thing with mesquite. You know, I mean, how many times have you gone online and seen somebody's advice of like, okay, first step, soak your wood chips in water. Okay,
Yes,
well, if you do that with mesquite, like that shit is going to be
that's
like
probably yeah,
pretty bitter, you
yeah.
know? So stick with, you know, tried and true, burn clean wood, burn a clean fire, have white smoke, or I mean, blue smoke, and you'll be good.
I didn't want to forget, and it popped in my head when you said umami. What you use for a certain dish, beef rib burn ends? Do you use mushroom powder? Is that what or
Oh
something?
yeah,
Or
my grand champion beef rub. So I'm a two-time world beef champion.
at
At
Memphis in May?
yeah, I should put those two trophies behind me.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, that rub has a bunch of different types of mushroom powders in it. And like that umami flavor on the burn ends is, or really on any beef, is freaking outstanding. On like a ribeye steak, burgers. I mean, I really love cooking with that stuff. It's one of those rubs that I don't have a single other beef rub in my house except for that one and one that's like a base coat that I'm about to come out with.
okay.
And I use that stuff on everything.
Do you have the mushroom in a seasoning that you sell? Is that something that you sell with
Yeah,
the?
it's called
Okay,
Grand Champion, our Grand
I'll put a
Champion.
link below. Okay, okay, cool. I didn't. Yeah, I apologize for not
Yeah,
knowing that. That's awesome.
it's on our comeandeat.com. So we sell a lot of it. It's not the cheapest seasoning because of the ingredients in it,
Yeah.
but so many people that have ordered it are, you know, that's all they use now for any of their beef products. It's really great. And it was pretty funny. Like at Memphis in May, I smoked all my stuff using mesquite. And if you go talk to people in Mississippi or Tennessee or any of those places, they're like, oh, I can't eat mesquite barbecue. It's so nasty, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Well, that was like the dirtiest secret in the world that I let it out that I cooked the, you know, two beef dishes at one over with mesquite.
And what was that feeling? What is it like? A lot of people like that are in the barbecue world or watching or listening aren't really necessarily part of that competition world. What was it like winning in that? That must have been
Oh,
incredibly
dude, that was awesome.
exhilarating.
Probably
Yeah.
like one of my highlights of my barbecue career was doing that. Now I have my own team. We compete in hog too, whole hog. But I've always loved the competition side of barbecue. Heck, I'm wearing an Insane Can Posse shirt right now for cooking on drums. But to me, it's a great way to have my creative outlet. Like at the restaurant, I want to serve true traditional Texas barbecue. So I can't like get funky and play with weird flavor profiles and like really kind of stretch the limit
Yeah.
of barbecue cooking.
They
But
expect it to be consistent too. It's something,
yeah,
yeah.
and I just love that idea of like building flavor profiles, putting it on there, testing stuff. I mean, all the way down from your injection. I mean, we've gotten to the point now where we're cooking off our own broths
Oh,
to make
that's
into
interesting.
injections, just so you're building that flavor profile
Mhm.
from literally the center of the meat all the way out to the finishing dust that we'll put on stuff.
Wait, so are you doing just Memphis in May, or do you do other competitions?
I do others as well. If have free time and can do it, I'll go around. I always compete at the Houston has a world championship. I always compete at that one. And then I try to hit like maybe 4 or 5 larger,
I didn't know that.
used to be IBCA or CBA cook-offs. Like San Antonio has a real big one that I'll do. And, this year I wanted to do San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Memphis, all kind of in a spring run. But it's just a whole nother side of the barbecue community. And it's really funny. Like the competition community doesn't really commingle with restaurant community.
No, it's
Restaurant community doesn't commingle with
yeah.
the other. And that's just kind of an anomaly with Texas, because when I leave Texas to go to compete or even go cook with other teams, like I just recently did one in Virginia. We did a hog MBN, which is Memphis Barbecue Network cook-off in Galax, Virginia, and I did it with some friends from Mississippi. Like those people have restaurants and compete. They all know each other. It's a huge community. People from Florida, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama. Like it's a huge community. But like here, it's like wicked divided.
Yeah, yeah.
And like never the two shall meet.
It's such a strange thing. It is.
Competition cooks don't know what they're doing. Restaurant cooks don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and if a competition guy opened a restaurant, they're like, like people are up in arms.
they
Like
like
he
roll their
doesn't
eyes
know what
at it.
he's just
Usually
getting
their
stuff in
greatest
styrofoam.
flaw is that they try to bring like competition food to the everyday diner, and it's just so many steps, so hard to scale it, and it's just not conducive to eating a whole tray. Like that's what I tell people. I'm like, you wouldn't want 5 or 6 of my competition ribs and 3 slices of brisket. Like you would throw up and like
It's way too
be
much.
plugged up for a week. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just not a good idea.
Have you ever? Oh, you're not a judge, or have you ever taken like that? Isn't there a course to become a judge? Or
Yeah, for KCBS, MBN, there are judging classes. So it's actually a really good idea if you're going to compete to go take a judging class so you kind of know what they're looking for. And like I try to tell a lot of people too, like the competition side of things is, how many salt and pepper briskets are you going to cook at 250 to 275 wrapped in butcher paper? Like I'll be if I'm the first one to say that's fine. Like it gets old. Like same thing in and day out. With the competition stuff, yes, there are very arbitrary guidelines, but now that I've done it for a long time, I've realized that those are really actually important to kind of the integrity of the competition itself, because we've done some that don't have it. And it's really hard when, they say, look, you can't sauce in the box, you can't cut your stuff up. Well, it's really hard if I'm going to be turning in my, beautiful 8 nice cherry red ribs and they're in the box, they look beautiful, but we're not going to judge on appearance. Okay. So now some guy who comes in and dumps Casey Masterpiece, which these judges just off the street might like.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy wins. Like, yeah, but that really isn't in the spirit of who the best cook is out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things that me and Matt Pittman were actually talking about that after last year's Houston Rodeo. Like more educated judging and like firm guidelines create a better playing field because you know what you need to be cooking for.
Yeah, you want a level playing field.
And like if you're a good cook, like it's kind of fun to be like, hey, you need to cook a piece of brisket that looks like this and tastes good and fits in this. Like I call it like precision cooking.
That's interesting. No, that's and I guess yeah, he would skirt those worlds because of his rubs and stuff. That's
Right.
he does both sides. He has a lot of the home cooks and stuff. Yeah, that's it's interesting because along this path, I've been doing this for more years than I imagined. But I've come in contact with the competition world, but there are people that kind of report and talk about that world a lot more than I do.
Right.
I'm more of the restaurant because I've been worked at restaurants and done stuff. But
Right.
it's fascinating. That's cool that's I didn't know that was completely your side. I know you had won best in beef, or is it
Yeah,
best?
it's just a beef category, so you can turn in any beef. So most people are doing brisket.
Mhm.
Not a whole lot of people did beef ribs before. Some people just do like a KCBS, which is Kansas City barbecue style burn ends. And I was like, yeah, well, if people are doing brisket burn ends,
Yeah,
like what's better than brisket burn ends? Like beef rib burn ends.
yes,
So
definitely. Is that
some people,
sold at both your restaurants?
the what? Nope.
Okay.
It's like so labor and like that process of me making this is like this,
I didn't
but
know if maybe it was
maybe if you ever
like a
come over
random
to my
special.
house,
Okay.
you might be able to sneak one or something. I don't know.
Okay. No, this it just sounds so good. Okay, so that's why I've heard it brought up, is just it's something that people have had, but it's not something that you have at your restaurants.
Correct. Yeah, it's an enigma, but they're delicious. They're like little like beef barbecue brownies. I mean, they're sweet, they're super savory, they're
It's
smoky. They have a big umami punch in the middle of them. Like it's just they're good.
no, it sounds so good. Do you have burn ends at either of your restaurants just in general, or is it
We tell people we have burn ends every day. You just have to be lucky to get them.
okay?
That was one of the things. Like when we opened the restaurant, so many people would come in. I guess just based off the history of the places in Houston, that would like cut the burnt ends off a brisket and give it to people if they asked for it. And so I told people, I'm like, no, if you want the burnt ends, like
Yeah.
order the 5 slices of fatty brisket it's going to take to get to the burnt ends. I'm not just going to like strip all the burn ends off of all my briskets in the first hour and a half of opening so that you guys can just eat burn ends. That's not how this is going to work. It was actually kind of an adjustment. Like I had a lot of people that weren't down with that.
Yeah. What year did you open your restaurant?
16.
16. So it
Yeah.
was still so people were starting to Houston people in Houston were starting to understand barbecue a little bit more. Like I guess not I hate to say Central Texas style because
It's
it's
craft barbecue.
craft barbecue. Yeah.
People are starting to understand like paying more money, prime beef, non-bucket sides, but there was still a huge uneducated group of people out there that had no idea. I mean, I remember one lady came in and asked for food and I was on the line cutting back then and she wanted a plate. And I was like, well, we don't sell plates here. And she's like, no, I want a physical plate to eat on. I'm like, well, no, everything here is served on butcher paper in a tray. And she said, oh, I can't eat off of that. And of course, I'd been open like 2 months. So I was trying to accommodate everybody,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, this is how we serve it. And she was like kind of making a pretty big fuss about it. And so I said, you know what, just hold on 1 second. And I went, I used to live upstairs, right, of my first location. And I literally went up into my apartment, got a plate out of my cabinet and brought it down and gave it to her. I said, here's one of my plates. Please don't put it in the, don't put it up all the trays. Just I'll come pick it up off your table, but here's a plate for you to eat off of. I mean, she was like appalled that we didn't have like China, to eat the barbecue off of.
No, but that's also when I worked after I left Texas and came back to work for a barbecue place in Los Angeles. That was a criticism a lot of times, is that it was a terrible place solely because they were serving on butcher paper, because
Mm-hmm.
that people expected to have plates and
What
forks
am
and
I, an animal? I'm like, no, I mean, you have a knife. It's okay. You have a platter,
they think
Set it
of,
on the plate.
I've even heard it called like prison, like a prison or something. And I thought,
Right.
what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And that's so I thought, okay. So the first place, your first location, you did live up above that place. Is that, did
Years
you, how many years?
for 3.5.
Okay. What was that like?
Smoky.
Was it really smoky?
Oh, dude, extremely. Like when we finally moved out, we actually couldn't take any of our clothes, our beds, our furniture, our sheets, any white clothes were all tinted yellow.
Oh my God.
And we had to buy all new furniture, everything, because like the only thing that came out of there that was furniture wise was my mounts, because I wasn't just going to leave them up there. But like, it could not have been good for my health. When
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
older, I probably will look back on that time. But you know what? Like, I had to do it. You know, when we first opened the Houston store, I didn't really hire anybody with any barbecue experience. My philosophy was that I wanted to teach them the way that I did things. Even if it meant me working 22-hour days for the first 4 months we were open, that's what I was going to do, because I wanted to set up something sustainable where I didn't have to be on the block all the time. I didn't have to be running the pits all night. I knew we would never last a long time, like being that way. And I knew that if I brought other people in, they would also bring in their methods until our culture was so set of this is how we do things. Kind of also the other thing was that if you start bringing in other people, they might influence how I cook too. Not necessarily that would be bad, but like at the end of the day, we have a product that got us here. I want to stay true to what we do and provide it. And so for the first 4 months, I slept from 2 to 3 in the morning, and I slept from 2 to 3 in the afternoon pretty much. Oh. And that's why we were closed on Monday and Tuesday for so long, because come Sunday afternoon when the pits were off, I would just like crash out and then sleep kind of all Monday, and then Tuesday get up and fire up for Wednesday. So we didn't open for 6 days a week until like halfway through this year.
Yeah. No, I noticed.
Or Wednesday through Sunday, you know?
Oh my gosh. But you were younger, and you were able to like, but still like that's tough. And then the fact that, could you tell that it was smoky in your apartment? You could just.
Oh yeah. When the pits got opened, like my now wife and I would be like, the pits are open. Or like, dude, there'd be times in the night where I'd be like, smells like grease burning, and like run downstairs and the pits are too hot, you know?
It's got a weird stress in your life like that.
But it was one of these things where I loved it because like going back to when I was a little kid, like I love, and I get a lot of energy by being with customers, talking to people, being with the staff, all that kind of stuff. And so for me, like that time was so special to build relationships with the community, right? And just listen, talk to people, have people talk to me. Like, I just love that. You know, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I think it really allowed me to establish a lot of the stuff that we do today. But when it was time to go, we lived there like too long, to the point where there really wasn't enough AC at all to keep it cool in the summer times. And so it would be constantly like 85 degrees up there through the summer. Oh. And even with like window units that we would put in. And so it was a hot summer, and it was like, I don't know, late October, and we got a cool front, and there was no heat up there. So we went from like being really hot, and then I woke up the next one morning, and it was like 58 degrees up there. And I turned to Sarah and was like, we're moving. I can't do this for another winter. Like, we've lived in this apartment. We thought we were only gonna be here 6 months. We've been here for 3.5 years. We've saved money. Like, we're getting out of here.
Well, what was it? A restaurant that people lived up above before? Is that what it was?
It was
just an odd situation.
It was a restaurant underneath, and the old landlord used to live upstairs.
Okay. But it wasn't obviously barbecue, was it? But you guys, and then do you have a pit room that you built in the back?
Off the back, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was actually barbecue, and it had been like 6 or 7 different things.
Okay.
But the lady, it had been a El Tiempo at one point, El Tiempo Taqueria, had been like a chicken roaster place. It had been a barbecue joint. It had been its last life, it was an Italian restaurant. But the lady would like apparently only sign very short leases, and she was kind of nuts. And if the restaurant was successful, she just raised the rent. And so they'd move, which is like really kind of counterintuitive. You'd think if you had a good concept going, you're like, they're paying you, you know, it's working. Well, that wasn't really her philosophy on things. So one thing led to another, and she sold the property, and another person bought it, and we ended up working out a deal with him, and I lived there for 3.5 years. So
do you other people living there now, or is it an office?
It actually looks kind of weirdly like I just moved out still. Bed is still there. Sheets are still on it. There are some clothes still. I mean, dude, we literally packed a couple bags and just left.
Please send me a photo of that someday. I want to see that. It's like those, all those things. There's a house in Los Angeles where there was a horrific murder. This is like in the 40s or the 30s. And it's still, apparently, when you look through the windows, it's still Christmas time. and the presents are still under the tree, like a fake tree or so, or maybe the
Yeah.
tree is dilapidated. But it's weird when things are like isolated in time, like frozen in time. That's
Oh yeah, like even stuff that's like on our refrigerator, like reminders to do stuff. Like, I mean, it's just like one of those things like we're getting out of here and we're not coming back. So, I mean, I thought it would be cool at one point to like revamp it and then turn it into like this badass Texas barbecue Airbnb experience. I don't know what the liability is on that, but
maybe if you have some like proper like ventilation, something special. But that
right.
would be what an experience. That's not a
Yeah,
bad idea. Maybe that's their fourth or fifth job. That because
exactly.
that's so yeah, to stay above a great barbecue place. That's wow.
And you can come down and like cook with the pit masters at night.
Yeah.
We would do like the completely immersive barbecue experience,
Oh,
you know?
that's perfect. That's please, yeah. And if you're looking for investors, please let me know. And if please email Grant if you want
Yeah.
to be on the waiting list for that's really interesting. So what made you? Because we've got like not off top, but what made you want to open a place in San Antonio? Did you have family there, or was there?
I
Or had
have
you lived there before or something?
I have some family in the hill country.
Okay.
I always thought like San Antonio is a good market. You kind of see what happens in Austin. If you go to a lot of the Austin joints and you go stand in the line, like only 25% of the people are actually from Austin. So anytime, I don't want to say like, oh, I want tourists, but like that's just, like bonus customers,
Yes.
right? Houston doesn't really we have a huge city, enormous, with a lot of business travel, but we don't have like just a lot of straight up people visiting for fun,
Mhm.
probably more now than we used to because food scene's so good. But like San Antonio was a community and a city that didn't have like a premier barbecue spot downtown, kind of had that bonus of convention and
Mhm.
travelers, and also had like a strong barbecue identity and like people that wanted to eat barbecue. And like, I don't know, it's a cool city, right?
Yeah.
You go to it, like I'm a big sucker for history.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
And they do a great job of preserving it there and all those kind of things. And just being able to open a place like substantially closer to some of my extended family. My kind of barbecue flame was lit out in Junction, Texas. And that's kind of where like that Mesquite influence comes from. And like eating barbecue out on my great uncle's ranch out there, it's just like a very thing that's like at the center of my passion for
I can
barbecue. It's
imagine.
just kind of like a catalyst moment for cooking going forward. I mean, one of the reasons I came back and made that salt and pepper brisket out of the Legends of Texas cookbook was that I couldn't get something that tasted like I could get out there here.
Huh.
And that was a recipe from Cooper's in Atlanta, which we would eat at. So I was literally just trying to recreate
replicate
what I
that.
would
Wow.
eat out there. So it just seemed like a good business move. And we had somebody that approached me. Really wasn't running down a whole bunch of rabbit holes over there. Somebody approached me and said, hey, we have this development we're doing and I love your food and I think you'd be a great fit. We want somebody to have like a flagship barbecue place in downtown San Antonio. What do you think? And I was like, well, I'll come over there and check it out. And I went and looked and I'm like, these guys were really passionate about barbecue and they really wanted to they weren't in it to try to get rich or anything like that. They made money doing other stuff. They're like, literally just want to have a place I can go eat barbecue downtown because I work downtown.
That's awesome.
And so it was a really good thing. And it was very organic and just kind of came about. So
was it right before the pandemic that you guys were talking?
Yeah. We started talking I feel like maybe I want to say the beginning of 2018.
Oh,
It
wow.
takes
Okay.
a long time to open a restaurant like that. And then they had stuff they needed to do beforehand, and just one thing led to another. But we started construction. We also went through 3 designs of that restaurant before it. I was very particular with what I wanted, so the design planning phase took a while. And
What
then,
did you want it to look like? A lodge? Is that sort of the
well, we
idea?
wanted it to look like it'd been there forever.
Okay.
If you go to the outside of it, it has 130-year-old San Antonio brick on the outside.
That's
Most people that
awesome.
come in there be like, I can't remember what this was before this. And I'm like, it was nothing.
I love that.
It wasn't
I love
here.
that so much.
We hired one of the best classicist architects in the world to design that place. And he's actually from San Antonio.
Oh, wow.
His name's Michael Ember. and he designed it. And we just really wanted to make a place. If you've been at the Houston store, it has that very like hill country kind of, limestone interior, old mounts on the wall, wood. Like that's what I like. I mean, obviously I'm here sitting in front of a mount. And so that was going to be like a larger, kind of grander, more opulent kind of version of what we have in Houston.
What's the seating capacity of that place?
It's very large. It's like 2.5 times Houston. So I don't know, probably pushing like 280, something 300, I don't know, something like that. But we have the whole like acre of park in front of us that we're in. So like with indoor, outdoor, I mean, we've had events for a couple thousand people there.
Wow.
One of the things like with Houston, like that really ignited my passion for doing barbecue here was we lived in, I guess, the biggest city, like, single metropolitan area in Texas. And we had all these people coming for business travel and leaving. And like, I'm not going to like screw it. They're probably not watching this. Like they're eating Papa's barbecue, which is, fine for what it is, but it is essentially, kind of fast foody barbecue. And they come to Texas from New York or wherever, and they would eat that. And then they'd go home and they'd get online and be like, I've had Texas barbecue and it ain't crap, And so that I was like, well, if we're living in the biggest city in Texas, like we need a place that like when those people come, they can come eat here and go back and tell their friends, like, I went to Texas and I ate barbecue there and it was awesome. And so it was a similar thing, like for San Antonio made a lot of sense because there's so many people coming from out of state that like, I wanted to give that like Texas craft barbecue, like aha moment to. And so that's one of the reasons why it was so exciting to open that store, was to be able to kind of dip back in. I mean, now seems like everybody is familiar with it here. So getting some customers that had never eaten anything like that before was really a fun process.
Yeah, and it'll continue that way. Do you live in Houston?
I live in Houston. Yeah, okay. I'm born and raised here. So family's here. My brother, nephews, and mom, dad, and everybody. So this is home base.
That's home base. What now for both places? Is there a line? Like, do people like in San Antonio? Would you expect to wait a long time for food, or would it be?
It varies very much. If we get a big rush of people coming from a convention, there will be a line. One thing I noticed that's very different about San Antonio is that diners tend to go out later. And since we're a place that offers lunch and dinner, people don't really worry about us selling out. So they don't like come at 10 and wait. They know that they can get food. But like in Houston, we have people every day, 30 minutes before, just like showing up ready to eat, just kind of queuing up, right? For no other reason than they're just like ready to eat early. In San Antonio, we don't like, things sometimes don't get kicking until like noon or past noon, even on the weekends, which was like, to me going in there, like when I opened it, I was freaking out because it's Saturday, my sales like 30 minutes into opening, they were like horrible, and then like come 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I got a line off the porch. I'm like, what the hell? But I've always been a person, we keep our menu very short, very specific. The whole way I've designed how you go through the line is meant to be extremely fast. And we actually have myself, when I lived there, or managers like sit there and clock like time you get in the line to time you hit the register and get out. And like, I want to be having a transaction about every 45 seconds, ideally.
Oh, wow. So
if you come to a restaurant with a line of 30 people, you should be done with getting your food and paying for your food in 30 minutes. And a line of 30 people is actually like 30 transaction line is actually a really big line. If you start, next time you go to a barbecue line, figure out how many actual transactions there are in the line. And if you think about it, and that's just been like a big thing for me, which is why we don't offer potatoes. We don't offer a lot of things. We don't offer a bunch of crazy sandwiches, because if you think about it, you got a line of 30 people. Each person's order takes an extra 30 seconds. That's extra 15 minutes the person has to wait. Now you do it with a line of 45 people, and 30 seconds goes by like that in like food service time. So, a minute and a half, think about just like toasting somebody's buns. Like, when they order the thing, doing that, or like assembling a taco or a baked potato. Like, dude, that takes time. And if you're going to add an extra minute to everybody's, like, that's how you end up waiting for an hour and 15 minutes when you're like, what the hell,
Especially if you're
brisket and 2 ribs, So I
Yeah,
don't know.
and
That's
there's never like a rapid speed line. You can't get like a fast pass just for a small
like,
order. But also too, like if you're training somebody in that line too, that could, if they're making potatoes or doing things like that, sandwiches,
oh yeah, dude, not no bueno.
add 3 minutes of that or 4 minutes per person. Yeah.
Right.
That's okay. So that makes sense. So that's being efficient is important. So then the Houston location isn't open for dinner.
It is.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Just people in Houston like to eat early. They get to
Okay.
work early. You know, like if you think about like the energy markets open early, and like oil and gas guys tend to get into the office pretty early. And so usually around 11 o'clock, like they're absolutely ready to eat. You know, on the weekends we might be sold out in Houston around 7 something, but we're at I can't cook anymore. And you know,
So if someone comes at 5,
they're good.
they're good for both locations. And it sounds like and that's a great option because I do know of a lot of people that do take their kids to San Antonio or travel to San Antonio. And it's good to have an option downtown. That's a really good option downtown.
Yeah, and you know the bar in San Antonio, we have full bar service at each store. Our bar service is like that whiskey selection at both stores is phenomenal. The liquor selection at the San Antonio store is like borderline world class. I mean
I think I've heard
really great bottles too. Very under the radar. Like no matter how many times I tweeted different like writers and stuff about like, hey, you know, our bar is super underrated. We should be on the best of certain lists. I can never get any traction. So we're just the best little bar nobody's heard of.
Do you have a list of what you have there?
It's full of tons of allocated bottles. So, and they'll just come in and out as people drink them. But, you know, when the Pappy allocation comes out, we'll get at least 2 or 3 bottles. We usually have Eagle Rare 17. We have the rare Wellers and Boss Hogs. We've had several of those. We had Fitzgerald birthday bourbons of different years. We had a lot of really like hard to find stuff.
Can they order, if you go to the bar, can you order barbecue there?
No, yeah, go through the line
and
then go to the bar and then order your drinks. And the reason we do that is that, and if it gets really busy, like on the weekends when the weather's good, we have a bar outside. So if you're waiting in line, you can grab something while you wait.
That's great.
But the issue is like to keep accounting way easier and more separate because alcohol is taxed different than food. It's just so much easier to keep it separated.
Yeah.
Plus, if you're selling barbecue in the line, like I have some people, and this is probably revealing some of my business secrets, but like we've had people like, why can't you just put a bucket of beer, like a trough of beer out here for people to get? I'm like, well, that's because you're going to grab a Lone Star and then you're going to pay $3 for it. And that's going to be the only drink you have. But if you go to the bar after you get your food and you see, oh, look at that bourbon, or, hey, that looks like a great margarita, or look at that ranch water. You might try something you haven't tried before, and we'll get the upsell and you get to drink something delicious.
Yeah. And also too, and people should be cognizant of the fact that the margins are thin. And you make money off of the alcohol. You make money off of merchant. There's other ancillary things that you can do to make money, and people should be happy with that, understand that. But also, yeah, there's also too. It's funny. Like a lot of times they'll be like free beer for blah blah blah, and you're like, it's not always like the best beer, but you're
right, exactly.
But also it's beer, and people like
right.
beer, and it does beer.
There's only 2 types. There's free beer and cold beer, right?
that's true. Yeah, yeah, not even close. But I wanted to make sure that we did bring up the fact that you went to UT for rhetoric and writing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what was that specific to? Did you want just to become a better writer and speaker, or was it something for the wildlife, being like a writer that way?
You know, really how that happened was I got in and was an economics major. And like, I'll be the first to tell you, like, I liked to party in college and I didn't like math. And in order to get your degree from UT in economics, you had to take like a full set of calculus. Like it was not happening for me.
No.
And actually like calculus at UT was a class everybody failed. And then you ended up figuring out if you passed or not when they ran it through the bell curve. Oh, okay. And so it was like brutal. Like all my friends that took it were like, it's the most demoralizing class, you know, and it was a series of them. And so I had to bow out before that, but I had kind of discovered these rhetoric classes within the College of Liberal Arts. And I love to write. I loved to write when I was in high school. I liked to write when I was in middle school. And I'm dyslexic, so I really don't like to read very much, but I like to write. So a lot of people will be like,
Huh.
"Oh, is it like English?" And I'm like, "Nope," because I don't want to read literature and I don't want to read novels. That's hard for me. But like, I love to like write what's in my head. So there's like the first factor. But I'd taken, they had I think it was like 308 or something, like Rhetoric 308 was a mandatory class, and I took it, and I was like, "Hey, that's pretty cool. No tests. I just have to write, 3 papers, and kind of like study some cool stuff." And people were saying like it was about this class was about the art of debate. And I was like, dude, this is kind of interesting, right? And so I just kind of as an elective, I took another one. And that was, I think, like a rhetoric of film or something
Okay.
like that. And watching old movies and seeing how like, messages were, and not just old, but even current ones, like what subliminal messaging are you getting from
Yeah.
films, right? And I'm like, damn, this shit's pretty cool, And so when I bowed out at econ, I had all these rhetoric credits stacked up that I was going to use as a like minor or just to fill some elective stuff. And I was like, well, man, I'm already almost like
Yeah.
halfway if I wanted to be a rhetoric major. And like looking at the course schedule, I'm like, man, a lot of these classes look really cool, like rhetoric of political speeches, rhetoric of photography,
Wow.
just like cool shit to learn,
Yeah.
right? And so, and I've always been a person that like I love debate. I love getting into like like deep philosophical conversations with people, and like making your brain kind of hurt, like
Hmm.
stretching it.
And
And
walking away thinking I've just learned something or I need to rethink. Yeah. Mhm.
right. And like they say, one of the things I like dyslexic people is like you kind of look at stuff from outside the box. And so like rhetoric was an opportunity for me to like use that skill of being able to look at stuff from different angles. And
Oh,
it ruined me because I can't like watch the news now. Like Twitter is painful, like all this stuff where you're like learning all these rhetorical fallacies and stuff that are like used all the time now to convince people of things. And you're just like, man, that's all bullshit,
and it's been happening forever.
Yeah, and it's been happening forever. So I took those courses, and it was like I say it's a godsend because when I got out and started doing this and started doing business, I do all our social media. We live in a world where you have 5 seconds to make convey a message and to make an impression on somebody. Before Twitter changed theirs, it was 120 characters to get your message across.
Mhm.
And the cool part about rhetoric was people would think, oh, would you have to write like 20-page papers? I'm like, no, you would write something that would require a 20-page paper in 5. Like no words unnecessary. Like everything to get your point across as clear and concisely and as convincingly as possible. And so it really set me up to be able to do things
Yeah.
online to engage future customers kind of uniquely better than other people. Like even got people who are in like the comm school for advertising and stuff. Like I had a grasp of the power of certain words and the way they're put together and all that kind of stuff that, that can evoke different feelings and images and all that kind of stuff that I kind of naturally used in all of my marketing. So I use that a lot. And, I have had so many people say, oh, well, if you were a, rhetoric major, I guess you didn't use that very much in your field. And I'm like, well, actually, I was a 24-year-old kid that took, 5.5, 6 years to graduate college. And I wanted to start a barbecue restaurant and I needed to raise $750,000. And I convinced 7 people to give me $750,000 as a 24-year-old living on my parents' couch. I said, I probably couldn't have done that without being able to speak pretty well and persuasively.
Yeah, if you weren't persuasive enough, yes, definitely. That's amazing. And yeah, because I was an English major, and a lot of people say, "Well, you don't you?" Well, of course, I use it all the time. I use it all the time, and
Yeah, like it's funny. The liberal arts degree, when done well and actually challenged in the academic setting, should make you able to stretch your mind and look at things like really critically. And that was like the idea. And like we had talked about earlier, rhetoric was one of the 6 pillars of the original liberal arts degree. And like you can see, why that was the case, because when you come out, you're supposed to be able to approach problems. I'm not an engineer. Like I wasn't trained for one thing and that's it. And then I go out and have my job and I'm very good at it. I'm trained to think critically, And that's not underrated. So you see people bagging on the lib arts degrees all the time, but they're good if you're in a challenging environment.
Well, let's hope there's someone that's younger. I don't know if anybody like be 14 or 15 or 16 listening to this, but that wants to go to UT for that, because I don't think every college has rhetoric, right? Rhetoric and writing. I think that's, if you type in rhetoric and writing on Google, it comes up with UT. Like
it's like one of the premier programs for it in the country. If you start reading, a lot of the people who are professors there have actually written a lot of the modern like books that are used for teaching it.
Wow.
We took a class, man, that's a rhetoric of the Gospels.
Oh,
and
wow.
that was like really
fascinating.
I'm not get into like politics or religion here, but that was like very like hard for me to like detach myself and like look at stuff, like take a hard look at things that I didn't want to take a hard look at, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then make my own conclusions from that. And it was a faith building thing for me, but at the same time I was like, wow, that was like, I feel like that was what college is intended to do, is like put you in, it's like really uncomfortable to kind of look at. Some people come out one side of it, some people reaffirms whatever they believe, whatever. But like that should be what college is about. It's like really pressing you into uncomfortable spaces, like break outside your own mind.
And also too, because a lot of people haven't left their little world. And so going to college, your hope, like there's all the fun part of college, but that's what college truly should be, is something that opens your mind to so many other different beliefs and and ways of thinking. And yeah, I would love to I'd like to audit that class. I wonder that I'm going to make a note later on for that class, because this sounds really intriguing. It sounds like you had some amazing courses. Do you have trouble being dyslexic? Do you have trouble writing that you write? Because I have a friend that's really dyslexic and he would flip letters and stuff. He would
I would do that. I try to type everything. And then like I tell people and funny enough, I love to write, but like grammar has always, not like spoken grammar or things like that, but like grammar rules have always been incredibly hard for me to like get, or not really get, but like, I don't know. I just have I remember being in like 8th grade, and okay, so in 8th grade, we had to do like a grammar portion of our English class. And I made like a 38 on that portion of the test. But also in 8th grade, I took a language enrichment course, which was a creative writing. And I got awarded the highest average in that course. Like, there you go. There's like the weird kind of flip flop. For me, when I read, I have to read almost every single letter, which most people don't realize that they
read blocks.
Recognize, even multiple words at a time. Boom, 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 boom. Like that's how their brain ingests it. I am literally, so I'm like, I used to tell my mom when I was little kid, I was like, my eyes hurt. And they went and got me to try to see if I needed glasses.
But it was it
was in my brain, not in my eyes,
That's fascinating.
But so
it's also something like people probably like, you'll grow out of it.
Right. I'm like, my grammar on Twitter still sucks, and I just totally disregard it.
You know what's great is, and I thought I had great grammar, like I thought I had a great grasp of grammar, but they have an app. It's not an app, but it's an extension for Chrome. That's Grammarly. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, that's cool.
And it'll, I don't know if it's like maybe $3 a month. It's something pretty cheap, but because they send me emails or like this month you did great, and I think they're tracking whatever. But it will tell you where to put commas. It'll tell you it'll say this word combination doesn't make sense, or this is a run-on sentence. It's like reading, but I don't know if it's maybe.
That's really cool. That would have saved me so much time in college.
Yeah, same with me. Yeah, I think I might have a touch of, or maybe I think everyone's brain works faster than their mouth or their thoughts. Like I'm constantly thinking, but we've talked about a lot of different subjects. This is a fascinating, there's a lot of fascinating things. I want to get into the hours just so people really quickly, what people know, so they know the hours of both restaurants, but and then they're roughly like almost like 2.5-3 hours apart. Is that if you were
3 hours. Yeah.
3 hours. 3 hours. That's Houston to San Antonio is roughly 3 hours.
So many times, no matter how fast you drive it, it's going to be 3 hours.
3 hours. Okay.
And it's like weird. You can drive at 75 and it's 3. You can drive at 90 and it's 3. I don't know how it's possible, but that's just the way it is.
There's something in the middle that's like stretching it or something. Well, what do you write it all now? Do you get a chance to? You do creative writing on your own, or are you gonna ever come out with a book?
I figured that writing about hunting and fishing would be the thing that I could do when I'm done with barbecue.
I gotcha. Okay.
But I couldn't do barbecue. I couldn't have a barbecue career when I was done having a journalism career. You know what I'm saying? Like, now is the time to do this one, maybe on my own. I would, and honestly, like I use social media as a way to write, just some stuff. Like, I'm kind of like a word junkie too. So like, I remember writing papers and being like, that's a good word for that spot. But like, I can do better than that.
Mm-hmm.
And like deleting it out and like finding a more like clear, like just such a nerd, like,
no, but
something that is more evocative, something that's like more powerful, more a better word, like I don't think a lot of people necessarily think like that, but it's a cool way to think. And I kind of get that nerd out in myself on online.
Yeah. So at least people will know that at least that's a creative outlet for you. And that would be, in the 4th, 5th, 6th career of your life, you'll be doing that. And that would be, and you'd be doing it for fun, because I think it obviously takes a lot of time for you to convey what you want to say. So if you don't have that time right now.
Right.
So what are the hours for both restaurants?
11 to 9, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday we're open, or Friday and Saturday we're open till 10.
Okay.
And if you're there at the bar and you're having a good time, we probably won't close the doors.
Okay.
Like you can stay there and drink. If you have a few people, like, if you're just like one dude drinking at the end of the bar,
that's different. Yeah, that's different.
We're probably going to tell you need to go home.
Or if you're a small group of people, that makes sense. Perfectly. All right, cool. That's awesome. And then I guess with Pinkertons, is it Pinkertons BBQ.com or is it Pinkertons Barbecue? I have it on somewhere.
Pinkertons BBQ.com.
Okay.
If you type in barbecue.com, it'll take you to the same place. And we have comeandeat.com, which is where all of our merch, our sauces, our seasonings, all that kind of stuff is sold there. You can also get there from PinkertonsBBQ.com.
Okay. And then if people can buy all that stuff at the restaurants too?
Yeah, most of it. It's like 100% usually in stock online, and like in stock in store 85% of the time.
Okay. And so, but is that one, what's the one with the mushroom? Grand Champion? Yeah. Is that one available at the stores?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, this has been so great. And I'm glad for myself for doing this, because I wanted to get to know you better. And I hope that people will have gotten that from this. And I can't wait to visit both locations, but it's, I think that's an ideal idea to do an Airbnb. I think that's hilarious. Cool. That's hilarious. That would be very unique. I don't think anybody's doing that at all.
No, they will now.
They will. I know. Yeah. All of a sudden, you see like 6 of them crop up, but they won't be in Texas. Maybe they'll be in weird places.
Well, they won't be like one of the my buddies like, dude, people could literally sleep in the bed that a pitmaster slept in, and like they could like wear your fucking clothes.
That's
true. Weird, but there's probably people out there that would pay a good amount of money to do that.
Yeah, you could actually give them your schedule, what your schedule was, and they could do that.
Relive it.
Yeah, that would be. So then it becomes like almost like those cosplay people or those people that like reenact stuff. Or it's perfect for like being in San Antonio. I guess it's Houston, so it doesn't make as much sense. But
it would be, people would probably do it and then be like, people who are barbecue fans would be like, yeah, screw that, I'm never opening a barbecue restaurant. That was horrible.
Yeah, actually, it's a good way to get.
I think that people would just get up there and then like drink and hang out and watch TV, and then like go down and sit in the pit room and just like drink more beer and watch guys work, and then go upstairs and pass out.
Yeah, and then
tell their friends that they, work here for a day.
Yeah, and they take 1,000 photos, and that's crazy. Thank you so much. All right, take care. See you. Bye.